Mr. Watson, we'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks everybody for joining us this evening. I would like to call this second meeting of the CRB to order. It was a pretty interesting meeting last week. I've been drinking from a fire hose since that time. I'm learning a lot and learning a lot from everybody. You know, I still wish for many reasons we weren't in this COVID-19 era, because it would definitely be a lot more just efficient and human to be able to kind of reach out and see you guys face to face. But nevertheless, we have a job ahead of us, and I've got a lot of faith that we're going to work together and do an excellent job and make some change in this city.
Mr. Watson, I can't hear you very well all of a sudden.
Oh, okay. Is that across the board? Folks can't hear me?
I can hear you, but it sounds like it got lower.
Okay, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna pull out my headset. I hope that my kids don't start going bananas, because this is dinner time. And this is usually the witching hour around my house. But can you all hear me any better?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, we're gonna try to do a better job of making this less of a Saturday Night Live skit this time around. There's definitely a lot of logistical nuances when it comes to running a meeting in Zoom and meeting everybody the first time and discussing serious issues. The first item I want to cover is the approval of minutes from the previous meeting. Does anybody have any recommended changes or anything with the minutes that were submitted? Looks like we all concur with the minutes. I figured that it would be probably good to just go around one more time, since this is really our first meeting as a board. The prior meeting was more of a kind of an introduction to the city. But again, for the folks that are watching on Zoom and Facebook and the other venues, it would be good to once again go around and just reintroduce ourselves and talk a little bit about our goals for being part of the CRB. And instead of starting with me, I want to go over to Ms. Carpenter, and if you can just give the audience a bit of an introduction to you and your desire to be part of this committee or this board.
Okay, my first name is Nancy. My last name is Carpenter. I applied to this board because I see that around the country and in this locality as well, there is a need for some real oversight on policies and procedures that our law enforcement use, and also to look at a venue that people trust to be able to place complaints in regards to use of force or other types of enforcement activities that they don't think is correct or right or fair or equitable or justifiable. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. All right, so let's go over to Mr. William Mendez. Hopefully it didn't come out too loud. Sometimes I tend to shout every now and then.
That's fine. My name is Bill Mendez. I moved to Charlottesville 3 years ago. My daughter works here in an organization that's kind of at the interface between mental health and law enforcement, among other things. And I became aware a couple of years ago of this interim board that was pulling together bylaws and statutes to set up a police review board, and also became aware of the questions regarding law enforcement data that were flowing around and for which there didn't seem to be any good answers. And as a data scientist, I've done a few analyses of the data that the police department has made available, and I think that such analyses will be very helpful in the future to assure equitable and fair policing.
All right, thanks a lot. Our next board member is Ms. Dorinda Johnson.
Dorinda, just call me Rennie. Born and raised in Charlottesville, and just had a birthday on Sunday, so 61 years here.
Yeah.
Um,
Happy
got,
birthday.
thank you.
And we already know we have somebody that's not, there's no way you're that old. I was thinking like 31, not
Oh, you
61.
know what? I really like you. um, I got involved and wanted to be on the board. I have two grown sons, 25 and 27, and it's not a day go by that I don't have the conversation with them on how to behave and what to do if they're ever stopped by the police. So it's a worrisome concern of mine. I've had other family members that have had dealings with the police, and it hasn't been good. So I am in hopes that there can be some type of relationship built between the Charlottesville Police Department and us that is going to be helpful to this community and in a positive way. And I'm hoping that no one will take anything personal, and that we will all be subject to constructive criticism. We have to be able to work together to make this work.
Happy birthday again, and I'm right there with you. I think we all need to work collaboratively as best as possible, as we know that this is probably a 500-year issue that lots and lots of people before us, hopefully less after us, have been trying to solve. I'd like to move on to Mr. Stuart Evans. Over there, let me hit my mute.
Hi, everybody. Happy birthday.
Thank
again.
you. Thank you.
Like I said last time, I'm an investigator at UVA's Title IX office. Before that, I was an attorney for a while. It was not that fun, but you know, whatever, life goes on. I have lived here in Charlottesville for a couple years. I think whether it's here or anywhere, I think sort of trying to hold the police more accountable is really important. I think we've seen recently how that everyone's become more interested in that, but I think lots of people have known for a long time that it's really important to try to do that. I guess I worry about how to do that, because for such a long time there's been such a significant amount of resistance, and I'm speaking broadly, not about here specifically, but from police departments to be regulated. And I hope that we can find some sort of way that works for everyone, not just one particular group. And personally, I'm interested in, you know, there have been all these calls by people to defund the police. They all mean different things, but I think what I'm actually very interested in learning about is how police departments, and specifically Charlottesville Police Department, is funded. Because I don't think you can really have a conversation about defunding or anything like that until you even understand how the police department works. So I think using the board as an opportunity to help the public understand that will be really important and allow everyone to make better decisions as voters and residents of Charlottesville. So James, I wanted to suggest that maybe if we want to go back and hold a vote just to approve the minutes, that we could do that, but maybe after you're finished with your introduction, just so we have, like, we tie that loose end up. I don't know that we're required to per se. I just know that a lot.
Yeah, I didn't think that we were required. There wasn't really a lot of tug of war over the minutes. Okay. And I think that, you know, this meeting, and once we get into the meat of it, can really go from supposedly 2 hours to much longer. And I mean, I don't know, unless anybody has anything they're strongly opposed to, or not even opposed, just hasn't, hey, we might have missed something with the minutes, we can make that ad. And apparently you can make them even after the meeting from my understanding. So I didn't want to, you know, but there probably will be some logistical stuff we might need a little help with when we do roll into voting, because you know, we tripped over our feet a little bit last time, but we'll get great at all this in due time. You might have been finished with what you were saying, and that big piece that's floating around about defunding the police. You know, I won't go into an opinion. That is we weren't hearing people saying that so much 10 or 15 years ago. So that is a definitely a topic that we will be discussing. A little bit about myself. I'm a 25-year resident of Charlottesville. I've got a daughter at CHS, and I've got 2 little sons on the other end of the spectrum that are at Greenbrier Elementary. Of course, nobody's anywhere right now. It's home all the time. So that's Greenbrier Elementary occurs right here at my house most days at this point. You know, I love Charlottesville. It's been a great place to be. I had the perspective of coming here as a UVA student, so that may be a little bit different. You know, of a background for, you know, I can't say I'm from here like Dorinda, but I've gotten to, I wish I could say I was, I've gotten to make lots of friends and family. And, you know, I just love people, right? If I look on this Zoom right now, the Brady Bunch of everybody's face, that's what my family looks like, right? Everybody, different ages, different religious beliefs, different races, you know, just all types of people. And what I would love to do is bring people together, right? And what I think it takes is just simple human decency, what we're really asking for. You know, we've got, you know, we got the bylaws and all this complicated stuff. We're having riots and we're decades into this, but just simple human decency. And one quick comparison to what I'm talking about is when the coronavirus hit and they started saying, wash your hands, right? Like, your mom told you to wash your hands when you were 1 or 2 years old. So you should already been practicing washing your hands. You go to the bathroom, you wash your hands, right? So human decency, that's it. You know, just respect people. If we could begin to respect each other and love each other, and I know it's not that simple, but really in some ways it is, right? Then we wouldn't even be here. We would all be at home right now. So I'm just hoping that we can work together. And you know, Charlottesville, a lot of people say it, but it can be a model. We're not that big of a city. I can walk the entire length of Charlottesville in probably 45 minutes. So I don't have all the answers, but you know, I look forward to working with you all. I know it's going to be tough. The people before us last year did an incredible amount of work that would have cost thousands of dollars if the city had paid a consultant team to produce what they produced. Okay, so that's my my long speech. Moving on to,
Mr. Watson,
yes.
I may
Mhm.
have Deirdre Gilmore
Okay.
available
Oh.
now. Can we try her?
Great. Okay.
Miss Gilmore, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. You're on with the PCRB.
Real quick,
Okay.
Ms. Gilmore, I listened last week and looked at what we did, what we all said, and you gave us just your name.
Uh-huh.
You got to give us a little bit more than that this week, ma'am. With all due respect. When we went around.
I'm a resident of Charlottesville. I've been here all my life. I have 4 grown children, 8 grandchildren. By trade, I'm a hairstylist, but right now I'm in the healthcare professional. And the number one thing I hear you talking about, and we were also raised to do this. My father always taught us, and my mom, treat people in a way that you would want to be treated. And I've been saying it for a long time. And one of the things that people have a hard time doing is loving on one another. And I feel that's why we're in the predicament that we are in. Me personally, I'm not here to bash the police, but I have a long history with them. My family does. I probably could tell you enough stories to write a book. And I hear people talking about defunding the police. My thing is, our taxes pay the police. I spoke about this years ago. You know, I used to live on South First Street. I'm there in Belmont. And one of the things I noticed was when the officers would come into our neighborhood, whenever they were called, they would come with an attitude. And I spoke about this in a meeting. I would walk the downtown mall, and it was a total different atmosphere watching them deal with the patrons down on the downtown mall. So my thing right now is just treat people the way you want to be treated. And when you know, I used to be a daycare provider, and I took care of Spanish kids, black, white kids, and I treated them all the same. It's not hard. When I hear people say, you know, it's hard, no, it's not. If you love what you're doing and you're doing what God lays on your heart to do, it's not hard to treat people right. And the number one thing that we need to learn how to do is love on one another, because that's what God is all about. I don't know how many people believe in God, but I think a lot of us believe in something, some type of higher power. So the number one thing we need to learn how to do is love on one another.
See, we just dropped the mic right there. You said it all, right? I mean, that is the simple fact why we are all here right now is we need to love each other. That was great. That was great.
Thank
So,
you.
getting back into the business of things, in our last meeting, we discussed very briefly the executive director position. We conveyed to the city manager that, we wanted to kind of go back now that we've initially even met, and we wanted to look at the position and compare it to the ordinance, and then look at the bylaws and try to communicate as best we could, which is a little bit challenging. Got a little bit of echo. So everybody who's not speaking, make sure you're on mute. And Ms. Gilmore, your phone may or may not be on mute, since you were just giving us that very eloquent breakdown of everything a few minutes ago. But anyway,
Okay.
so we all went back and took a look at the executive director position, and Mr. Mendez had quite a bit to say. He had quite a bit to say, even going into the previous meeting. And I'd kind of like him to take a lead. I know his sound isn't so great, though, although he's got the 1970s big headphones over there, and he looks like, he's looking comfortable like a DJ's or something. But if he could kind of, maybe take the lead on some of the things that you explained, that you saw in that position that would be problematic or might need to be edited, that would be excellent.
Yeah, thanks a lot, James. I've taken a look through the job description, and as I pointed out to a number of people, what we want in an executive director depends on what our bylaws and statutes are. And to some extent, we don't know that until, for example, the state assembly meets in August, and they may or may not change powers that are available to citizen review boards. However, I think there's a very easy, or at least a straightforward path to getting this job description written and out offering it to the public. A few areas where it, I think, falls short. One is that I think it does not emphasize sufficiently the independence of the executive director. It kind of places the executive director very clearly within the city bureau. And leave a lot of room for initiative, in my opinion.
And Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Too much. Can't really hear him that well.
Okay. I will relay some of the points. Did you get our comments via email about the position, Dr. Richardson?
When was that sent?
I believe it was sent out earlier today. We can forward it. We can forward those to you. But
who sent it?
It came from Mr. Mendez.
I'm not sure I forwarded it to the city manager.
I can't hear.
Yeah, it's very difficult to hear the explanation,
Oh, okay.
even though we did get an email.
Well, but Bill, man, you need a new system. You
Yeah,
got
I
the
need to,
headphones, but the system's not. So a couple of comments that we had in regards to the
Get it.
job. You can't hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I just didn't get I didn't get the email.
Okay. Can you forward that to one of you, maybe Stuart? He's pretty sharp with computers,
can do
laptops.
it.
He's the only millennial in the bunch.
That is,
So he might be able to forward it pretty quickly, quicker than I
I
can.
am not sharp with computers, but I'm working on trying to send it to Dr. Richardson right now.
Thank you.
Okay. And I will keep talking unless somebody has I don't want to be talking too much. So Nancy or Miss Johnson or Miss Gilmore, if you have, some points in regards to the executive director job announcement.
Well, I don't see why we have to wait for the state. I mean, I know there is some dynamic and really some good ideas that caucuses have put out for their special session. And I certainly support, I think 100% the, viewpoints, but I don't want us here in Charlottesville to hamstring ourselves for the next 60 days. If I don't know how long the session will be, but I mean, I know it's not going to be forever, but I just don't understand, the thinking that goes into saying we have to wait for the GA.
That
And
was,
maybe that's something Bill can talk to, share or somebody.
yeah, and I don't know if Bill can hear us, but I think his logic is that if the ordinance is going to change, right, if the city council goes back based on what we voted on before and goes with the original ordinance or something pretty close to that, that his interpretation of the job description doesn't give that executive director, I guess, the autonomy from the city, that independence was one of his comments, that it may get in the old bylaw / ordinance combo. I know they're different, but it is confusing, to be honest with you. So I kind of think, if we, any job description that's put out there, right, by the city should have some flex so that it can cover whatever ends up being the final ordinance, right? And that might be possible. I'm not an HR expert, but you take a elementary teacher, okay? Let's say a school hires an elementary teacher, elementary education. You may get there and find out, oh, I thought I was going to teach second grade, but in reality, you're teaching first grade. At the end of the day, if you have those requirements met, I think you can still be hired. Again, I'm no HR expert. But I see Nancy's point in terms of there's some risk of waiting in general, right? Because kicking the can down the road, the city's already got money, I think, allocated or approved to bring this person on, but we just don't want to pigeonhole, I guess, is the worry. I don't know how much flex they have in the city to change somebody's job a little bit if something else happens that would dictate that job needing to change. Anybody else got, additional thoughts on the executive director job description requirements? One of the things that Bill pointed out is that, and you hear about this from the folks that are heavily talking about defunding the police, and they're saying, well, we might need more psychologists and more types of professionals that are part of what we have known as a police force. And so one of the things he mentioned is, with the education requirements for that position, there may be a need to hire somebody who has a social work, a master's in social work, as opposed to a criminal justice type, individual, or somebody with that background, somebody with a communications background. There could be a variety of other skill sets that may also be capable of fulfilling the position than what's there now. Guess if I was a little more Zoom savvy, I would put this up on the screen so everybody can see what I'm talking about.
If anybody can hear me at all, I've been trying to get in on telephone. If you
Yeah.
got a telephone number ending in 24, that's me.
Sounds like you're getting electrocuted every time you speak, sir.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, that's a little better. I don't know what just happened.
That better?
Oh man, that's great. Okay. Hey, so if you can swing back and maybe briefly just kind of re-explain your points you made about 10 minutes ago, that'd be excellent. Thank you, sir. Did we lose him?
You got me? Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Mendez, we'll need to mute your computer and if you're going to use your telephone.
I think that's your problem. You're hearing yourself on both ends.
Okay, mute me on the phone.
No, your
mute me on the
phone
phone.
is good. I've muted your
Okay.
PC.
Okay, good. We good now?
We're good.
Yeah, I think so. James did it just fine. Essentially, independence, and there's kind of a narrow emphasis on investigation rather than public outreach in terms of the qualifications, and a rather narrow emphasis on law enforcement and law enforcement related qualifications in the experience education category. And I think those are things that we need to work on. And I'm sure that members of the board and certainly myself would be willing to, discuss this in more detail with, staff if the city manager thinks that would be useful.
Yes, that would be useful, especially with certain things that we have listed right here. I would like to review with the board again, just to talk about it in terms of the way that the ordinance is written and the structure of the job description. But as you mentioned before, Mr. Watson, that the job description basically mirrors what is in the bylaws as well as in the ordinance.
Yeah, in the existing version.
Yes.
So if there's a change, if we don't want to wait for a legislative change, we would have to make some kind of agreement on sort of a broadly worded job description that assures, independence and those other good things that we were lobbying for. I don't think what we would come up with would be inconsistent with the old ordinance. It would just be kind of an expansion.
Yeah, I think.
I'm wondering. Oh, sorry.
Oh, good.
I guess I wanted to ask if possible, I want to ask Dr. Richardson and any members of the city council who might be on the call, about the interplay of the delays we've talked, or the current bylaws, the request we made last week for the initial bylaws, and then the General Assembly special session. Because I understand that the city council doesn't want to, they want to wait to talk about any changes to the bylaws and ordinance until after the city, or after the legislative session is over in August. But I guess I wonder, wouldn't that necessarily, isn't there a potential that would affect any job description too? And so should we therefore wait on the executive director position too, or should we try to move forward with all of it? I guess is what, because they seem linked to me, and I would love to hear any thoughts about that.
Could I offer a thought?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One thing we could do is take Mr. Mendez and the remainder of the board's recommendations and again, have Dr. Richardson work with members of the CRB on that final job description and certainly put it out, but maybe instead of having a 30-day turnaround, give it some time, maybe 75 days out. And that way, if the General Assembly acts in August and the council then responds to that while it's out, you can change the job description. That's one idea, is to have a longer time for if you want to get the job description out, but you also want to have that flexibility, you can put a longer time period for the job to be open.
I think that is obvious. I'm speaking for myself, Mr. Chairman. Is that all right? Yeah, I think that would be very good. I think the point that Stuart was trying to make was what particular aspects of the General Assembly legislation do we believe would affect the powers of the CRB? The only, I've looked at the Black Caucus proposal and the Democratic House proposal, and the only thing that I've seen is subpoena power. Is there something else that we need to consider as well?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Oh.
One thing that I've noticed in I believe the Virginia Senate Democratic Caucus, there was also a mention of possible disciplinary authority. But again, I don't want to jump too far down this train because right now no bill has actually been introduced, but it seems like there will be a number of proposals that come once the governor calls the special session.
So it seems like we're doing apples and oranges. We want to have a description that kind of fits the ordinance and how we're supposed to be operating as a board and a director in one capacity. We, had a vote the other week about, taking the offer that was made by council, and we want to operate in this way. And then the unknown is what the GA is going to do. I'm trying to think, how can a job description be all things to all people? I mean, you're either gonna have an executive director that has a lot of power and doesn't share it with the board, or an executive director that works in conjunction, with the board and shares power. Because if you share the power, that's how you're going to make transformational change. If you keep the power, I think, in one particular, area that, anyway, how do we make transformational change? Well, I'm not talking about, but we make change. So that's where I'm having the trouble. How do we write something that covers everything?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to see what Dr. Richardson thinks. And I want to say that I'm glad. I've been in Charlotte for a long time. I'm glad the position's been created. Okay. Because 2 years ago, we didn't have a position. 10 years ago, we didn't have a position. A lot of cities in Virginia don't have a position. We just want to try to get it. I'm not even going to say right, because you might think you got it right, and then things happen, and you're like, oh, I forgot about that, right?
Well, we can,
yeah.
Mr. Chair, we can continue to work on it and to get it where it fits. But I mean, as you mentioned in our last meeting, you didn't think that we would have the email addresses in time.
You got me.
Yeah. So we work fast here now. So what I want to say is that
that's true. New culture.
So we can continue to work on it together, and then, you can get the information back from the others if you, talk about the job description, but you and I and the vice chair can work together to be able to put those ideas into this job description, and I can vet it and make sure that it still fits with our current bylaws and ordinance at this time. And if it changes, go forward, I mean, at least we'll have the body of it. And if we need to add some things into it, we can do that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think sometimes we can get really caught up in the details in something that won't allow us to move forward.
And I just want to say one more thing is that, this is basically what we provide to all of our directors when we do our job announcements. And then we'll do a nice brochure and everything like that to be able to, draw people in to the position. So we'll do all those things to make sure that, we get it out around the country and make sure that people do see the job announcement. But, like I said before, we can continue to work on it and get it right. So, it's ready. And then, like I said, if there's any changes that we need to make, moving forward to make it fit whatever changes, I mean, it'll be so easy to adapt or to be able to make those modifications to it.
Will this be brought back to the board as a whole to vote on?
I won't speak for the chair, but I will say that as we have been doing so far, as far as different things that we've been doing from our last meeting to this meeting, I think that it will be brought back for everyone to have, because it's it's your job description. So you will have input in it. It just need to make sure that it, like I said before, that it fits the bylaws and the ordinance, the way that it's written in terms of what the director can do and cannot do.
Okay, that makes sense to me. We'll continue to work on it. That will also allow the city to begin to advertise, because it takes time. I don't know how the funding works, whether or not you kind of have a certain amount of time you want to get somebody sort of identified in that role or not by the end of the fiscal year. I don't know how that works or whether that's an issue or not. But
no issue.
I think that's just one of our many steps working together, right? We just massage it all the way through, and we'll go back and vote on it and see where everybody feels about it, and we just keep it moving.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to ask, so long as it's okay with Dr. Richardson, that maybe Mr. Mendez or another member of the board instead of me be involved with the job description, just because I know specifically with Mr. Mendez, he's like, it's his area of specialty. So I don't want to I haven't focused as much as him on the job description. I just feel like he might be a better contributor than me, but I defer to the city manager on his thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I can work with anybody. It's and then the bullet points that you have in your the areas that you want to make modifications to, it's not that, it's not that much. So we can talk about that and get that done if that's the case.
I volunteer. I volunteer, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. And this isn't just a one-person show. It's just Bill has had that passion. He was fired up, ready to go to first meeting about that description. But this is going to touch everybody. We're all equal. We're all equal. Everybody's going to look at it on this team. He's just taking the lead on it right now because he's the HR guy, right? We got to maximize our skills.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I think that the committee to look at or come back with a recommendation for a job description isn't totally representative of who is on this body. Okay. And I just wanted to check and see if some of the other commissioners might want to be a part of that, Ms. Gilmore or Ms. Johnson or myself.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was just saying. He's gotten out front like Rudolph, but it doesn't mean that he'll be the front in the end. And I don't know that he's saying that he has to be either. So if anybody wants to take the lead on it, but we're going to work collaboratively. Unfortunately, a lot of our communication has to be these few email, right? You can't have everybody on one big email. You can't meet. So we can meet like this and discuss everything over Zoom, right? But other than that, it's not like before where you could go to an office downtown and sit down and open it up to the public to basically work as a group. So if anybody would like to, if you feel like Bill has already done too much,
Oh, no.
and it's time to hand it over.
No, in addition to Mr. Mendez, I think he's got some tremendous ideas. I don't know.
Well, I think I am perfectly willing to share what I've done with everybody on the board and continue to solicit comments.
Okay. So it sounds like we are going to collaboratively work with the city manager, but, you know, work as a board, of course, continue to revise this job. We want to make sure that the position has that autonomy, that it's not completely being guided just by the city, but it's, ooh, I don't think that's me. It might be Bill.
Yep, Mr. Mendez, we do need to keep your PC muted.
I just took out the.
Auto tone going on
Sorry.
or something there, sir.
Here we go.
All right.
We are now muted.
Nancy's face.
I think we're muted.
So we'll continue to make some revisions. The revisions that we made, as Dr. Richardson said, are not crazy significant, but we can continue sort of to circulate that around the team and work with the city just to get it in the position so that they could send it out on the streets and advertise, and it sounds like it has some capability to be modified, you know, even if something changes, you know, and down in Richmond, that we're going to allow for the ability to modify it. Is that true? Is that what I heard, Dr. Richardson?
That is correct.
Okay. But look, I don't know. We got some more other thinkers, other thoughts.
But when you change a job description in midstream, that might change the interest of it might change, well, it might bring someone new and maybe definitely a good fit, but, is changing a job description potentially in midstream a good practice?
I wouldn't say it is, but I would say that there's certain skill sets that you need for this job, period. Okay, example, 5 years experience, right? That's generic. There's nothing unique about that, okay? I mean, it's unique, but it's like, there's certain factors here that regardless of sort of how the person actually executes the work, you're gonna want these types of things in that person's resume, right? And so the job advertisement is like a shell, right? It's kind of like a Honda Accord, right? And the ordinance is like that body, right? It gives it the 6-cylinder versus the 4-cylinder. So there's certain things in here you're going to see on several job descriptions on the city that are just generic boilerplate. At least the last page and a half is boilerplate, in my opinion. We'll work in the office, things like that. But up in the front, yes, there are those things, but again, that ordinance is going to really give it the muscle that's going to dictate what this person does. So, and you're right, you don't want to eliminate people, but that's why we were suggesting adding even more skill sets like social workers. This is heavily tied to somebody with a criminal investigation background or law degree, or somebody that's worked for a police force. What about a social worker? I'm an urban planner. I think an urban planner can do this. So I'm not saying we're totally changing the job scenario where 1 minute we were asking for a dishwasher, now we're asking for a cook. We're just saying that cook you bring on, instead of cooking waffles, or making waffles, he might be making pancakes. Because because we can get real tied up into it, but a lot of times these jobs play out a little differently anyway in reality once you start. So that's my opinion on it. Anybody other thoughts? I feel like Dorinda wants to say something. Got something. All right. So, okay, so then we'll continue to review, work together, and just we'll get to a place where we can advertise it. I don't think we're there yet. We may be a couple weeks, right? But
You are correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Right. So last week we had that window of time where we voted on reverting back to the bylaws in the original ordinance. Right. And then there was some discussion that came up and said, well, the current bylaws don't allow you to vote instantly on a bylaws and ordinance in a meeting, but you got to do it beforehand or in writing. And so then you can do it in another meeting. Right. So to Mr. Blair, do we need to vote right now to have the city council, as Nancy put it, revert back to the original ordinance and bylaws? And do we need to go ahead and do that vote again to make it official, or what's your recommendation?
Well, Ms. Carpenter's motion last week, I do want to clarify, when I went back and read or I should say, listened to the meeting, Ms. Carpenter, it sounded like your motion, I thought it was a motion to amend the bylaws, but it sounds like it was a motion to ask the city council to amend the bylaws and the ordinance. Is that correct?
It was to go back to the original ordinance and the bylaws that were part of that ordinance that the original PCRB presented to city council as their recommendation for the way this board should be operating. And that was based on hearing, council say, let this new iteration of the board decide which version they wanted. Did they want the November 2019 version, or did they want the one that was worked on for a year or more with the blood, sweat, and tears of a lot of people?
Okay. Well, thank you for the clarification. What I would advise, Mr. Chair, is to just have a roll call vote based on what Ms. Carpenter said, and that would be to ask the city council to revert back to both the bylaws and ordinance presented by the original CRB.
Okay, so then we can proceed to do that now.
Yes, sir.
And we can make that official. Now, here's another question. When we vote, it's a little bit confusing in the Zoom, do we need Ms. Robinson to help us sort of facilitate that and count the votes, or how does that work?
Yes, either Ms. Robinson can call the roll call, or you as the chair can call the roll. That'd be advisable in Zoom.
Okay, I think I would rather, if I can have Ms. Robinson kind of facilitate that. I found myself writing and counting and looking at different squares and a little bit confused.
Point of information or order,
Yeah.
I'm not sure which. Do we need to make an official motion again?
Good point.
Or are we operating on the motion that I made last week? And that was seconded.
Yes, it was seconded last week. And if I'm accurate, and it sounds like based on your motion last week, it was made by you, and the minute report it was seconded. Ms. Carpenter, if you'd like, you can just say, I'd like to make the same motion this week and have somebody second it.
Okay. So done. Nah.
I guess before I potentially second it, I would ask that Nancy kind of restate it. Just just so I'm sure, and then also because I'm taking minutes. But then, and before we vote, I would suggest that maybe, I just want to make sure that, like last time, I know some people on the board who voted had some questions, or maybe I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to chat about it and share any thoughts or ask any questions, because I don't want it to be rushed or anything. But definitely want to start with making sure I understand what Nancy's the motion is too.
All right, be glad to restate it. My motion was for this CRB to ask the city council to allow us to operate under the ordinance that was presented by the original PCRB members with those attendant bylaws, and not the ones that were adopted November 2019.
I second that motion.
Can I amend that by a little bit?
What's the amendment?
This is where I'm getting sort of learning the Robert's Rules way of doing business. But my amendment is, I'm going to vote in favor of what Nancy's asking for, but I would like the city to give us reasons. You know, they don't have to be 10 pages long, but for the pieces that they changed in the ordinance, in the original, to what we have today, why, right? That's going to take time. That's asking me, I'm a volunteer with this, and people are busy. I get it, but you know, if they said, hey, because from my interpretation, and I went back and looked at videos because I haven't been to a lot of these meetings, and I never really saw a why, right? Now there could be good reasons. Hey, this is illegal. That's the thing that floats around. This is not illegal. But if we can get, if they said, okay, well, we'll give you back 95% of everything that was in the original bylaws and ordinance. I know we can change the bylaw piece. If they were to give us back 95 and keep out 5, well, why not those 5? Not legal or not practical or not enough funding, or, you know, I think that's the part that the folks that did all that work in us and the public, one of the pieces I think that, and I may have missed it, right? Because I was working, busy, wasn't in all the meetings, but I feel like there's that piece that's missing is, you know, because it looks like from a public point of view, right, that, you know, these folks did all this hard work, went to all these meetings, did all this research, did all this training. City had them do really $1 million worth of work in consulting, and then said, oh, thanks a lot, and then we're just going to tweak it. Now, I've built some things in my life. You build something, you have a plan for it. It doesn't always end up the way you initially intended. Things get revised, but it didn't seem like there was a back and forth. And so I was long, I'm sorry, I went on and on, but basically, so to amend that, I just want to, if they can give us some reasons for those things that were taken out.
I'm not going to accept that amendment to that motion. If that wants to be a separate request, I think it should be a separate request. I don't want it as part of that motion. It's good information that's needed, but I don't think it's needed for this motion.
Do you need a second person?
Mr. Watson, Chair Watson, I should say, since you've proposed an amendment, the procedure now would be if somebody wanted to second your amendment and then have a discussion on the amendment, and then you would vote on the amendment. And if the amendment's approved, then it becomes part of Ms. Carpenter's original motion. But if it's not approved, then it dies.
Okay.
Good, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I guess based on what Nancy has said, in my recollection and the minutes I took, I think that we kind of already passed this motion last week. And I know that John is our legal counsel now. We haven't discussed hiring an independent legal counsel. So I guess I would suggest that we maybe don't need to pass it because it's the same as last week. We are a majority voted. And then that might simplify.
It was unofficial though, right?
No, we voted. we voted to request the city to do that. You know, I think that if we had tried to change our bylaws, which we didn't, we voted to ask the city to change them. We would have had to have the second meeting.
Okay.
But I would suggest that maybe we could just like whatever mechanism we need to do, but we could then, that would just allow us to vote on your amendment, right? Or you could make a motion about what
Okay.
and we could consider this already resolved because we voted last week on it. I think one of the things that I don't want to speak for John, but you know, he was asking for clarification on what she meant. And I think I'm happy to have that clarification just to make sure that the minutes were right. And I think they were right. So I guess I don't know that we even need to revote on this, and unless there's some sort of desire that everyone wants to. So I guess,
Okay.
even though
Is
I
that
did.
true, Mr. Blair?
Well, I think so. I interpreted Ms. Carpenter's motion last week to also be a motion to amend the bylaws, which requires 2 readings. But based on the clarification today, it sounds like it is purely a request for the city council, not this board to amend the bylaws, but for the council to amend its ordinance and the bylaws that it adopted in November 4th of 2019.
Okay.
And-
So that's, I mean, the ball is rolling for that, right?
Right.
We thought at the time that it could be done or considered or discussed at the next city council meeting, but the intel we received is that they're going to wait until the special session. So, okay, nobody seconded my suggestion to get reasons why, so we can just keep on moving on.
No, Chair Watson, I would say that
Do that as another.
I would second your motion, but I think that maybe we, just for the sake of clarity, we should consider, Nancy, do you want to withdraw that motion since we're considering the fact that we passed it last week? And then you could make a motion, Chair Watson, and I'll second it to ask the city for that information. I don't know if everyone will vote on it, but I'm happy to have this. This is a completely separate motion, yeah?
Yeah. Okay, so the motion that I voted on that I made last week was simply to ask city council to revert back and allow us to operate under the original PCRB bylaws and ordinance that they presented, and not the November 2019 edition. And so that's put to sleep, right? I'm understanding that is put to sleep. That's a done. And then we want to consider what Chairman Watson wants to ask of the city, which is some explanation of information. And that's the motion that's on the floor. Okay.
I'll second Chair Watson's motion about requesting that information about why specifics for why each change was made.
Mm-hmm.
Roll call.
I noticed Miss Gilmore, her phone is lighting up, but I don't hear any sound.
Okay, I'm on.
There you go.
I couldn't hear you.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So there's a motion on the floor. There's a vote now, right?
Yes.
And we're voting on the city giving us some explanation for why they took some things out of the ordinance. Just some explanation. Because I don't think that was ever provided.
Well, I was wondering the same thing.
So if you're voting, it sounds like myself, James Watson, Stuart Evans.
And I would like to know, I would like to know as well.
Johnson. I don't know what Bill is saying. Dude, we got to get you a computer.
Mr. Chair, would you like for me to call the roll so everyone can vote?
Yes.
Okay, well, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Ms. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Gilmore,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Mendez, Mr. Mendez, I didn't hear his vote.
Mm.
Did anyone else hear his vote?
He says he vote yay. He voted by chat.
Oh, I see. Okay. So he did vote in favor, yes. And Mr. Watson. And you're muted, Mr. Watson. You could just repeat your vote. If you could just repeat your vote, Mr. Watson.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Chair Watson, this is Nakaya. May I address the board?
Yes, ma'am.
So I just, we've had these discussions with the former board during council meetings, and we had two, like 2-to-1 type of meetings, or just meetings with a couple board members. And that's why there were Councilor Hill, Councilor McGill, myself, Chief Brackney, and Mr. Blair. That's why we came to the last meeting. We wanted to be able to answer the questions that about why. So if that is something that the board would want, we would necessarily need, you know, to wait. We've all been reviewing this for a long time. So Mr. Blair can answer some of those questions. We can answer some of the questions based on some of the, you know, budget concerns, which we are, you know, of course, looking at the overall budget in this time and have been, but that's why we all were here last week, to be able to answer those questions as to what were the city's concerns with the former bylaws. I just wanted to say that and then mute myself back out.
All right. Thank you, ma'am. I think I would like to see a written report. Doesn't have to be 80 pages, 200 pages, but a transparent piece of paper, not a conversation necessarily. We could go through and ask some questions, but it would just be, because that's how we, to me, that's how we begin to build this trust, right? It's not me versus the city, right? But that unmasking the vision, that transparency, because people feel, from what I watched, when I rewatched a lot of these city council meetings that I was not there for, people feel like something was taken away and they were never given a reason why. So I respect the explanation, but if it's possible, and I know that's time consuming.
No, we can do that. Yeah. No.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Having trouble here.
Chairman Watson, your mic is muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, well, that's great. We got, so that's a due out. It's probably not gonna be overnight response, but from the city, we have that in the minutes that the mayor said that they can provide us, you know, some written information that just explains, hey, we took these things out. You know, the mayor explained that there were several meetings where the previous members were explaining why those things were taken out, but we just want something written, just a piece of paper. That's all. I'm old school. Okay, so moving on, we've got to we've got to come up with a regular meeting time. That was one of the things the city manager mentioned last week, and we kind of touched on it, but didn't really put a mark in the sand, so to speak. From my understanding, the Zoom piece is pretty taxing, I guess, to some degrees, a lot of different meetings. How do people feel? I had kind of reached out to the city to see when they have windows of time available. How do people feel about Wednesday and Thursdays, or second Wednesday or Thursday in the month at about 5:30? But Wednesday or Thursday, second one of the month at about 5:30.
Those sound good, but can I ask a question? Maybe commission members that have school-age children or grandchildren or whatever, what is that going to look like come September when we start back to some type of hybrid school system? I mean, is 5:30 going to be that time for, for us? And as, committee members, where we are trying to breathe from having virtual classes or trying to get dinner or something with kids. And is that also a good time for, the community at large? Because they also will be facing a lot of this educational fallout from the pandemic. And that's just my question is 5:30 an optimal time, or, can we do our own polling, of the board so that Ms. Robinson can be at home with her family or whatever? I just want to throw that out there to what kind of effect that kind of dynamic will have on community engagement and also the engagement of my, the fellow commission members on this.
Later in the evening was certainly more comfortable for me.
Mm-hmm. For me too. Yeah.
How late? I've got 3 kids in school that I've been home with for about 120 days at this point. So,
yeah, I mean the old board used to meet at 6:30, and they would have dinner, brought in and sit down, eat for a few minutes, and then do business, and that seemed to be very, very productive.
Hey, when we talk about the fun stuff, your microphone tends to work, by the way.
Oh, I left the room with the computer, so there's no feedback.
Oh.
You guys want to?
I think that's what.
Yeah, that works for me. It works for me. I know when I was on the Human Rights Commission, we met at 7.
Mm-hmm.
I work until 6 Monday through Friday, so
7 o'clock.
It definitely after 6 o'clock works for me a lot better than 5 or 5:30 or earlier.
James, you're muted again.
Oh, sorry about that. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
7 o'clock sounds pretty appetizing to me, although it is the witching hour, but can't do 8 o'clock, that's for sure. Kids need to be in the bed by then or close to it. Stuart has any kids yet, and see here.
I don't have any. Mine are grown. No kids.
Yeah, but
no
you got a JOB, right? And you get off till 6. Yeah,
6 o'clock.
Yes, ma'am. I got
you. That's right.
So let's see if we can get time to meet midweek 7 o'clock.
Okay, how does Wednesday sound? 7 o'clock.
I didn't hear directly from Chairman. I didn't hear directly from Ms. Gilmore. Is there, I mean, we all kind of spoke our piece, but does she have anything specific that she'd like to say?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
Does 7 o'clock on Wednesdays work for you, Ms. Gilmore? Just to double check, we're all in the same.
Yes.
Okay. I guess Miss Robinson would have to check. Now, I don't know if that makes her have to stay at work later or how that works, or
Yeah, and that's the concern, Mr. Chair, is that the staffing 7 o'clock and then the meeting may go until 9 or later. So would you take that into consideration about 6:30 to give us at least a little bit of extra time?
either you have to get on the smartphone on your way out of work, and there's gonna be times like that for me too. You know, I do some travel for work, so yeah, there'll be some times where the meeting's starting and I'm just getting finished. But so 6:30, y'all want to do that? Because I think that sounds like it'll be the best for the city and for us,
That'd be fine with
people's
me.
jobs and kids and
Yeah, I think
reality
that
of our lives.
later in the evening is better. It sounds like for almost everyone, and then also it's more accessible, arguably for the public.
Right. People
And,
getting off work.
I think also realistically, you know, sometimes whether it's travel or other things that come up, not all of us are going to make every meeting. As long as we have, you know, a quorum, we can continue. And so we just have to understand that. But whatever works for the city, but also for the board members, I think. Sounds good to me.
Okay, so
6:30 Wednesday, sounds good.
Yep. 6:30 Wednesday. And if they say, hey, Wednesdays don't work, can you all do 6:30 Thursday?
I can.
I can.
I can.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
I think I heard everybody on that one.
Mhm.
So they can pencil that in as a backup if they get in their Outlook and find that there's already some a conflict. And we're thinking the second Wednesday of the month.
Mhm.
Second
So
one.
that means we'd have a meeting next week.
I don't think we can do one next week though. Look at it. Look at Dr. Richardson.
Nope.
I can't do one next week.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
I think we can count this as our monthly meeting. That would be my vote.
What did you say? I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. What did you say?
Starting in August, we would do the second week of August, or the second Wednesday, or the second week of August. Actually, I have to look at the calendar.
Okay.
That would be
6:30.
August the 12th,
Okay.
and then try to do the second week of each month on a Wednesday,
Okay.
6:30. And Stuart's over there taking a note, so we'll have this. Maybe you can just send a little extra note that just says, side note, you know, this is the reoccurring. And let's see, we can set up when we all get our email accounts, we can also set up a reoccurring event in our Outlook calendar. Okay. I think we agreed on the meeting schedule. What are we looking at, trying to figure out where we are on time. So it is what, 6:20 and end at 7 o'clock. Want to allow time for public comment. We got a couple other things on the agenda. You guys want to go through these real quick or break out to public comment?
The NACOL thing will take 2 minutes, I think.
Okay, so back to the agenda, the new business section of it. We put in the Robert's rules. As you can see, I'm trying to get smarter on those. I've probably violated several of them, so I apologize. But yes.
Oh, I apologize. I was just gonna say, I think we're doing this really fine. Like we don't maybe need to do this after. Like we're getting the hang of it.
Okay. So yeah, so that's, you know, there's a lot of good YouTube videos out there. I get a feeling that Miss Carpenter's been in these meetings, but she's just got it down. You know, me, somehow I'm a city planner, but I've been a consultant and I've just been in the DoD world a long time. But so I'm trying to learn the nuances of the Robert's rules. Mr. Mendez, you are a Nicole member. You've had some training?
No, I am not. What I was going to do is to make a motion that we get an institutional membership for the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, which basically is just a bunch of organizations like us and they do training, and they do, they have a nice website where they advertise jobs. And they do reports and hold meetings. And I think that would be an extremely good idea. It costs $400 a year. So the question of where it would come from would need to be addressed.
Okay.
That
Who
seems to
has-
be, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You have a budget.
Okay, so do we just come to you and you write a big check? Man in the nice
Something like
suits.
that.
They take credit cards.
Okay. So who would like to take the lead on sort of getting us retied? I know the previous group did some training. Who would like to take the lead on sort of getting the ball rolling with Nicole? Training and membership and anybody?
Well, I've done the research so far, so.
You lived a semi-retired life.
And I'm not saying I'm retired,
Semi-retired.
so yeah, I've got a lot of time on my hands with the virus and everything. So I will forward an application to the city manager for their attention. And then assuming that's approved, I'll then kind of take responsibility for looking at what kinds of training are available.
Okay.
Mr. Watson, may I?
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
If you all will send that information to Max, she can go ahead and make sure that the membership gets started for that part of it. And that's it. Just she can make sure that you all are registered with the members, you are registered with the membership.
Okay.
Oh, that leads me to another question. We had some folks that were kind enough to give us binders that worked really hard to get us organized. And I was reading a section that talked about our funding, but of course that isn't a city source. So how much funding does this board have for training and events and things like that?
Well, the total budget that we have is $150,000. Then we have to hire the director. So whatever's left from that, what this will be is more of an inaugural year where we will basically look at the different things that you want to do in the forthcoming year. And then when we start developing the budget for FY22, we can be able to put those things in there in terms of the trainings and different things like that that you would request.
So the executive director position is intertwined with the 150 allocated to us for training and things like that. So,
Yes,
so if that person were to make,
present time.
okay. So meaning if that person were to make $90,000, now of course they have benefits and all, I might be going too far ahead, but if they make 90, that leave us with 60, or would that leave us with, oh, they make 90, but they got 25 in benefits? I mean,
well, that's what you got to look at. It's all tied into that. You got to look at the salary, benefits, and then outfit in the office for this individual, then plus, different things, trainings, and different things like that. So your budget is tied in with the directors.
okay.
But we know that we will probably have to find some additional resources to make sure that it's running properly and that you all are able to get the trainings and everything that you elect. So if it goes above that 150, then we just need to have a conversation about trying to find additional resources.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, it'll be kind of interesting too. I don't know if they're doing virtual training or how that works in the new world, but I guess that there's probably some pivots that have happened since we've all had to make adjustments. I would actually like at this time, being as though those of us who have worked or have kids or whatever that may be right now. I would actually like to go into the public comment portion of the meeting, if that is okay with the board members.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
since there's a $400 expenditure that's been proposed, I would propose that the CRB make a motion
Oh,
and
okay.
have a vote on that $400 expenditure.
Okay, so I move to make, go ahead.
I think the motion's on the floor. I think I need a second.
I'll second it.
I agree.
Okay. Ms. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Gilmore,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson. Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
okay. Mr. Mendez
Yes.
and Mr. Watson.
Yes. Okay, so do I call the, do I say the results that it's approved?
I would say you should, yes.
Okay, so we voted in favor to write that check and get that official training. Get smart. Hopefully they're able to do robust training, given again the nature of what we're going through right now.
Now, I don't mean to sound like a used car salesman, but there might be additional charges for training. You know, if they have to send people places, you know, we might need to pay their expenses and things like that. I think this membership mostly gets us access to their jobs website, which I think is where most people in this business go first to look for jobs. So just so you know.
I was reading that they had a 1-day training, I think last year. Previous.
Yes.
From,
yeah, and I don't know whether that's free or not, but I will check.
Thank you. Right. So, yeah, I would like to proceed to public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you're on the webinar and you'd like to address the Police Civilian Review Board, you can click the raise hand icon and we will call on people in the order in which they raise their hands. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to address the board, and we do have a timer visible in the video view of the webinar. Right now we have 33 people attending the meeting, and we have 2 people who've raised their hands. The first person is Mr. Jeff Fogel. Mr. Fogel, you're on with the PCRB and you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. I've been surprised that nobody's talked about the communication you received from the City Council saying that they had decided not to consider your request until after August. Now, what's key here is that the legislation calls for things that you won't get 3 votes on the City Council for. There are people on the City Council opposed to giving you subpoena power, investigatory power, or any authority whatsoever over discipline, including some who don't even think you should be able to recommend discipline. So what is the point of waiting until after August to resolve this question? Even if the legislature does the right thing and allows municipalities to have a truly independent oversight over the police, number one, it requires the municipality to want it. Secondly, it's not going to occur right away. It's not probably going to be effective until next July, which means you're going to be operating from now until next July, perhaps, under what rules? I don't know why the council wanted to put you off, but unless you get a commitment from the council that they're prepared to go along with that legislation, what is the purpose of waiting? And what I think also is that this body, as well as the council, but that this body ought to write to the Democratic caucus and to the Black Legislative Caucus, supporting their efforts to put into place the opportunity for municipalities to have a truly independent, vigorous, and true oversight of the police. The concern I have is you won't get 3 votes on your city council to support that effort. And to me, that's very serious because it suggests there's not a real interest in oversight and independence. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a number of participants on via telephone. If they would like to address the PCRB, they can press *9 on their telephone and that will raise their hand. Next up is Walt Heineke. Walt, you're on with the CRB. You've got 3 minutes.
Thanks. Thanks again for your commitment and service to this really important task of equity in our town. I just wanted to add something to what the last speaker said, and that is, you have to think about what happens if the General Assembly doesn't deliver. They may do the right thing, but they may not. So are we just going to wait and do nothing when we could be thinking about going back to the original ordinance and bylaws and moving forward, which would also send a signal to the legislature that these kinds of things are happening and you need their support. The second thing I wanted to talk about was I'm pretty sure that the ordinance and the bylaws allow you to engage independent counsel. And I'd like to suggest that you go ahead and do that and make a motion that the city manager help get the ball rolling on engaging independent counsel, because I think you're going to need advice from an independent source about some of the information that you're going to get from the city about what you just requested in your last vote in terms of getting information about what's wrong with the original bylaws and why can't we move on them. I do think that's a political issue more than a technical or a legal issue. Personally, I don't think there's anything in statute or case law that prevents us from moving forward. There may be some gray area, but it may need to be tested. And I also think that if, for instance, we went ahead with the old bylaws and you were sued, the city was sued, the city attorney could just go to court and say, okay, you win, and we'll go back to the November bylaws, all safe and secure, and no risk and no harm, no foul. So I think it's worth taking the risk to actually move forward with the original ordinance and bylaws. And I don't see why we're not doing it as a matter of moral principle. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, next up is Sarah Burke. Sarah, you're on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes. Sarah, can you hear us? Sarah, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can now. Go ahead. You've got 3 minutes.
Sorry about that. So I was a member of the initial CRB, and I have like a running list of a million things I'd like to say. But my first question is, are you committed to only having public comment at the end of your meetings and for 3 minutes for each person? I know that was what was discussed last time, but it feels like it's sort of signaling to the public that their input is only valued at the end and only in short segments. I can tell you from our initial CRB meetings, we allowed for public comment pretty much at any time because we felt it was valuable and necessary to the work that we were doing, and also allowed for people to help us along the way as we were getting started. So I just want to suggest that as a way that you might both learn from folks who have been doing this work and from the people who are involved in these calls as participants, audience members who have been policed disparately in our community, who have a lot to share and might not share that in 3 minutes. So I just want to say that. I also want to say that the issue, we did have some meetings with city council that were both private and public meetings, and that we never actually addressed the changes that were made to the current version. We talked about the models as we were envisioning it going along, but we never heard specific concerns about the legality of any of it. And we were no longer on the board, and they didn't extend our appointments to the point where they were having these conversations in the public. So I think that your request to get more information about that is wise, and to do that in a written document. I also want to tell you, in my short time that I have left, though I have plenty to share, NACOL is doing their annual training this year online. So they have a schedule where you can take different tracks. You can, it starts actually July 22nd of this year, so you'd have to get involved pretty quickly if you'd like to do that. You can sign up for each session individually, or you can sign up for the entire session that goes over numerous weeks, and it's all on Zoom. And I encourage you all to consider what you'd like to do and commit yourselves to the different tracks that they do have available. I want to echo Jeff Fogel's point that the laws that may or may not be passed in August won't go into effect for probably 6 months to a year, in which case most of your terms will already be over, and you will be sort of lame ducks at that point. So I think if you want to do any work, you probably want to get focused on that. And my time's running up, though I'd love to say more.
Thank you. If you'd like to speak to the PCRB, you can click the raise hand icon in the Zoom webinar. You can also press *9 if you're on via telephone. And Ms. Burke has raised her hand again. I just want to make sure she had finished her last comment. Sarah, did you have something further?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Are you hearing me this time?
Yep.
Okay, great. I also just want to say that I understand the difficulties of Zoom, and I really appreciate the way that you all are trying to get to know each other. It's a really hard thing to do on a virtual platform, and it's really challenging. We found it challenging, and we were in person. So I just want to acknowledge, I think you all are doing a wonderful job of trying to get to know each other in this way, despite all of the challenges with FOIA. I do want to suggest that that you have some public comment at the beginning of the meeting, which I think would be really valuable, and also at the end of the meeting. And that's one of the things City Council does, so that we can both address what happened in the last meeting and in the interim, in the meeting that you've discussed, like whatever you've discussed in the meeting of the day. And then I also encourage you all to, when you get private communication from council, to make that public in your meetings. So I know you all received an email from council about their unwillingness to address the issue of reverting back to the original bylaws and ordinance, but the public doesn't know that. And you all sort of talked around it today, and I think you all sort of tried to do that. But what I would encourage you to do is to, either read emails aloud or share those in some public way, that the city is the platform to do that. We worked really hard to publicly share the information we were creating as we were doing it, but also the communications we were getting. And part of that is because there is a lot of private communication, and the public wants to be aware. So for example, we haven't seen the job description that you all are discussing, and I suppose one of us could FOIA that information and go through Brian and have him do all that work. I asked Dr. Richardson for that job description on this chat, and he said it will be available once it's voted on by the board and once it's decided. But this is something that the public should be involved in, and I believe that you all should really work to make your documents transparent to the public. I also just want to restate my offer to talk about the work that we did in the past couple of years. I know this agenda happened very quickly, so I wasn't able to get on this one, but I would be available at another meeting if you'd like for me to talk about the work that we did, and some of the concerns that we had, and the ways that we tried to deal with the very complicated legal framework that we work under here in Virginia currently. And I also just want to say, despite the difficulties of Zoom, which I mentioned at the beginning, we have people protesting in our state every night about police misconduct and police brutality. And I don't think it's appropriate at this point to be meeting once per month. And so I think if there's anything you all can do to meet more frequently and to get this ball rolling, this isn't a board that's operating in an ongoing capacity that's been working for 5 or 6 years. This is a brand new board. And I realize it takes staff attention, and I very much appreciate that, but, and it takes your work and your time, but the community's been waiting a long time to get this off the ground, and to put this off for another month for your next meeting, and then maybe another month after that, we're talking about, maybe most of your terms sort of getting away from you all. So I just hope you consider pushing back a little bit on that with the city, of course, with respect for everybody's schedules on just those once a month meetings. And that's it.
Mr. Chair, next up is Rosia Parker. Rosia, you're on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes.
Oh, well, hello, y'all. Thank y'all for, again, for taking your time out to do this. But Miss Sarah has taken what I was going to say, especially about the meetings, because like she said, what's going on in the world right now, we do need more time with more meetings, because the one meeting is not going to be enough. And plus also, who is going to be your community point person? Because you still need to go out in the community, even though we're having this pandemic, but there still needs to be some type of contact with the community as community engagement, so that you can have so the community can have an understanding of what's going on, what is it that y'all are prepared to do, and also so that some community members can give you some feedback, because again, not everybody has Zoom. So without Zoom, you still wouldn't know what it is that the community wants. So I would appreciate if someone can do that, because that is part of, the process for the CRB, because if you don't have no one in the community to tell you what's going on, you really don't know what's really, what are you fighting for with the community, besides what, for this pushing for the CRB. Also, I'm kind of confused with this money, far as everything. I mean, I understand that they said that they would have to be additional money in case the 150 is gone with the ED, but I think that should be a separate piece for the CRB besides with the ED. Because like they say, it's so many different trainings, and we were very confused on with our money that we had with our budget. And plus we never found out how much money was left over out of our budget that could possibly be going into this budget for the new CRB. So that definitely needs to be checked in. Then also, as I'm seeing certain things, I understand that our police chief said that she's willing to be with the CRB, but more I keep seeing in the papers, and the willingness that she wasn't willing to help us with the original CRB. She keeps saying she doesn't understand, why does Charlottesville need the CRB? We need a CRB because the data that was gone before she got here, there's no presentation of that. And the only data that is presented to Charlottesville is what we have from 2018 when she came here. So I feel, and that's not adequate. So I feel that there's so much more that needs to be done, but it has to be more outstanding work done within the CRB, because if we continue to wait for the city council to do things for us, we're not going to get it done. So I appreciate, like I said, again, the time that y'all are willing to put in. I'm just hoping that one day that we all can just get together and just have a meeting with the initial CRB and the new CRB, so we can actually figure out some more things of exactly where we're coming from in order to push this CRB forward. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, next up is Katrina Turner. Katrina, you're on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes.
Hi, everybody. Katrina Turner. I'm one of the initial board members. I just want to first thank everybody for applying for this board. we went through a lot of stuff on this board. You know, I actually had the former Commonwealth attorney coming after me, threatening to put me in jail. You know, our chief of police, she walked out of meetings with civilian review board members. The attitude from the police chief towards some of the people on the board, you know, you have to look at that also, the way we were treated. I just really have to say, y'all have to be strong. That's all. Y'all have to be strong to go against the city council, because they're fighting every tooth and nail against the CRB. No matter how much they say they want the CRB, they're fighting tooth and nail for this CRB not to go through. We worked too hard to write those bylaws and those ordinances. Too hard. Didn't get paid a penny for doing what we did. Didn't get any appreciation even after the board was over. Couldn't even give us a luncheon, a thank you, or anything for what we did. Okay. I'm just asking y'all if y'all can please be tough and stand up to the city. They're going to come at y'all with everything they can for you all not to stick to your guns. And it sounds like y'all are going to start again. Why did we go through all that work? What was the purpose of us going through all that work for them to now make you do it again? What purpose is that? That's just showing the community that they don't want this CRB. But what we need for you all to do is show us that you can get us the CRB. This is what we need from you all. And you have to be strong with the people that you're going against. Because if you come against them and you talk against them, they're going to come against you. At every corner, they're going to come at you. So I just need for you all, please, to stand your ground and please help push what we did. What took people years on top of years to do. We did this in a little over a year. And I just ask y'all to please help us push these bylaws and ordinances that we wrote. I thank y'all again.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, there are no other hands raised at this time.
Okay. Would you guys like to do a little bit of discussion?
I would like.
Yeah.
I would like that.
I would like that. I would like to discuss the relationship between Charlottesville Police Department and the city and the community.
I second that motion.
I think we can just do it.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
If I may start, it seems to be a great deal of hostility between the community and the Charlottesville Police Department. And being from here and raised here and having situations, having things occur that I have had to have dealings with them myself, with family members, I can see why. So I just want to express the importance to me that there is a respectful communication and dialogue between us. And I have to stress, to be able to accept constructive criticism without taking it personal. That's a big deal to me, because if you cannot accept constructive criticism and you're going to get really mad and upset and take things personal, we're not going to get anywhere. we're going to keep this division. So what exactly is the feeling from the Charlottesville Police Department about the CRB? Is it true that they don't want it? Is it true that City Council, or that you really don't want it? We're not in this to sugarcoat anything or to not be truthful and to be transparent. Lay it all on the table, be honest, because when you're not, it doesn't turn out the way it needs to. So that's what I want to say.
Mr. Chairman, I guess in response to what Ms. Johnson and also some of the public commenters have said, is that an important thing that I think that we could do maybe, but before we end the meeting, is have a vote on whether or not to retain independent counsel, because that is permitted under the bylaws. And I think that would help us achieve some of these goals we're talking about, because one of the things that I think what we ultimately want to do is maybe hopefully come to some sort of memorandum of understanding with the police if we actually get an answer to Ms. Johnson's question about if the police are going to be working with us. And I think having an outside independent attorney to help us do that and to make sure that we're independent would be helpful. And so, because I think that there's an inherent conflict in Mr. Blair's role in that he represents the city council and the city itself and CPD, but we're supposed to be independent oversight. So I think that that's something we can consider. If we don't vote on it today, I would urge us to vote on it at the next meeting. And the last thing I want to say is in the vein of what Ms. Johnson was saying, is that, you know, it's not about, these aren't about personal disputes or questioning personal motives. It's about the institutions. You know, the people who are in these places that institutions represent, if they continue on from what happened, what's gone on in the past, and don't commit to actual tangible change, that's what it's about. That's what I think the goal of the CRB is, to make sure we come up with some tangible, concrete changes, not just talk about it. And that's, I know that can be politically difficult, or it can be difficult when you're in charge of all the police officers in the city. They may not want that. But if you're not willing to go there, then I think that you have to be able to understand that the CRB or other people might criticize you for not being willing to change, or at least talk about it. So it's not personal. It's more about these institutions, and that's I think a point that Ms. Burke made at some point about the CRB. It's not whether or not the police chief knows us individually or anything. It's about whether or not whoever is the police chief is willing to work with the board, whoever's on the board. It's not about individual personalities or anything like that. So I don't want to suck up all the air. So I hope that other people have some thoughts, because I think this is useful.
I would support what Stuart says, that we discuss and decide and vote on whether, to obtain outside legal counsel, because I do think that this does put Mr. Blair in kind of the crosshairs on walking a tightrope, and would prefer to actually have outside legal counsel. A minor point that I agree with Ms. Burke is about public comment. I'd like to see it at the beginning, so that when people access our agenda, if there's an item we're talking about and they want to speak on it, just like they do in city council, you have a chance to talk on the consent agenda. You have a chance to talk at public comment, or if there's a public hearing on an item that needs to have a public hearing, and also maybe even at the end, and that way you can split up, maybe not 10 at one time, whatever. So I think that's a good point, because I did see that it did help with the PCRB having some public comment even in the middle. Also, think that I agree with Jeff Fogel that maybe as a condition we should write a letter of support to both caucuses about the legislation they want to introduce, or at least what they want to see introduced. I think would be a good idea. And, you know, I also like to, you know, when we talk about our independence as a CRB, who do we invite as panelists, you know, at each meeting? What does that optic look like? So I would like to have a discussion maybe next time at our next meeting about, you know, who's invited, you know, as an actual panelist. Somebody to call in is calling in, that's fine. But whose names are actually, you know, on this Zoom that, you know, we're trying to, you know, like say, establish that we are as independent as we possibly can be. And how does that look? Thank you, Chair Watson.
Thank you. Ms. Gilmore. You still out there?
Sorry. I'm listening to everyone and I'm thinking back. The one thing I forgot to tell you is that I worked as an organizer for Public Housing Association of Residents. And we have been talking about Southfield Police Department for years. I talked about it when people didn't understand where I was coming from. And I remember my brother that just passed away in May. I remember the mistreatment that he got from the police department. I can go back to Deep Born. I can remember filing complaints back then. There was never a finding, no matter how badly they beat my brother. Nothing was never ever done. So with that being said, with the new chief, I haven't fully been introduced to her, but I agree, don't take this personal, because you're from somewhere else. I have lived this since the 70s. I have watched them mistreat my people. And here it is, we in 2020. I sat long beside Rosea, Ms. Parker, Jeff Fogel, Emily, Joy Johnson, Shamora Cooper, we all, Brandon Collins, Walt, Miss Johnson, we have all been fighting this fight for years. You got to put your, you know, it's a saying that my grandmother used to have, you got to put the big girl panties on, and don't take this personal, Chief, because you haven't been here that long. I'm just tired of what I see. And as everyone was talking, I was thinking about all the stories that I've heard from people, but not just the stories. I can remember the police coming into my home being very disrespectful. I can remember them putting a gun in my son's face. I can remember when my son was 13 years old. Not just one time, but many times they would make my 13-year-old child. He's a grown man now. My grandson that's now doing time. I can remember how they mistreated him. It's just been so many different cases. There needs to be accountability. If we're not going to, if we're going to keep on doing things the old way, and we just here just to be talking and rambling on, then, you know, I don't want to be a part of this. I want change. Change needs to happen because, you know, I can run down the police to you. And we have generations of police on this force that have mistreated us. And I know they don't like what I'm saying. They never did like what I had to say. But some things need to change. We are so tired of being mistreated. We don't deserve to be mistreated. I'm so tired of our Black men suffering. It's a young man over at the complex now that they arrested last year. And to my knowledge, he's still over there. And the way that they did him, it was criminal. And I just have a problem with people that call themselves officers of the law, but they really act like thugs. I just have a problem with it. It needs to be accountability. I agree with everyone on here. If I'm going to be a part of this board, we can't keep doing business as usual. We can't keep doing business as usual. And things need to change. We should all be able to, so with the chief, we should all be able to lay our differences out there. She should be willing to hear our stories. City council should be willing to work with us. We should not be going through this today. I mean, with everything that's going on across this country, we can be a model. So let's be a model. I mean, I'm just tired. You know, today was one of those days where I was like, I don't even want to be a part of this. But then, I think about my brother, and I remember what my brother went through. I remember they used to dog my brother. Not just my brother, my son, my grandson. Things need to change. Come on now. We can do it. We can do it. Don't nobody have time. We don't have time for the nonsense. We don't have time for y'all police officers to keep on doing business as usual because we are tired. And as you can see, there is a movement and it's not going to stop. And I'm spiritual. This is a movement from God. He's telling us we have got to turn this thing around. Mm-hmm. We have to turn it around.
Mm-hmm. And if I may say one other thing, there's no way in God's name that you can think that there are no problems or nothing wrong with the Charlottesville Police Department and that needs to be changed. You cannot possibly think that. All of the police departments across the country have issues, having these issues. So we have them. We are having the same issues. Mm-hmm. We've had the issues for the 61 years of my life. Mm-hmm. We've had the issues for the last 50 years that I've known of. Mm-hmm. We've had the issues. Mm-hmm. I live on Prospect Avenue. You can't tell me nothing. I know exactly what happens. Mm-hmm. There was a young man that got busted, supposedly was busted for drugs. All he had was weed. He had gotten into a fight with someone at the Exxon station. And then a couple weeks later, here comes military police. We had the tank, all of this stuff come over here in Orangedale. They kicked that boy's door in. They held a gun to his 16-year-old sister's head. Come on now. Threw that boy down on the ground, blocked the whole street off. Nobody could come or go. And you tell me that was right for weed? That was right? No, that wasn't right. It wasn't right. This has got to stop. It has to stop. And the policemen, and I'm not saying all of them are bad, but what I'm saying, the ones that are need to be held accountable, need to be punished, and need to be removed. Because guess what? It's a time bomb ticking, and I'm famous for saying that. That's my saying whenever I've had to go to city council, way back when I was going often. Charlottesville was a time bomb ticking before 2017.
Yes.
That Charlottesville Police Department is a time bomb ticking. And you are no different than any other police department in this country. So don't take anything personal. Be willing to accept the constructive criticism and make it a point to want to work alongside with the new CRB to make the changes to help this community before you are on the television in a very negative way again.
You know what? I agree with you because, see, the problem that I have right now is for the very thing you lock my people up for, that's what the police break so many laws and so many crimes. And I know for a fact, I can tell you story after story. You have people in prison now, and the police should be right there beside them because in the process of them upholding the law, they was breaking all kinds of laws at the same time. And they don't want to hear us talk about it. You want to talk about, they brought out that gang theory when Longo was here. Let's talk about who the real gang members are. Let's talk about who really breaks the law. And I don't think that when you go to arrest somebody, I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right. My God, I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right that you rob them and then you put them in jail and you keep them there. You've been shaking down in these drug dealers in this town for years. And I'm tired. And I know for a fact You break all kind of laws, and what y'all get? Y'all get promotions. What our people get? They get jail time. I know people right now from the 94 crime bill. 94 crime bill, Joe Biden and Clinton wrote. They still in prison. I have a letter upstairs on my wall right now from a young man still in prison. Come on. If you want to be an officer, then do it right. Don't put my people in jail for the same laws that you break. I'm tired.
And be respectful. Just be respectful. I mean, you got to be
Yes, God.
respectful of people. That's the big, be respectful and mindful. And know that is someone's life. That is a person that you are
Yes.
coming to see and to deal with. You don't have to don't come rude and nasty and disrespectful because you are coming with an arrest warrant. It don't have to be that way. It
Yeah.
don't have to be that way. It really don't. It does not have to be that way. First impression is a lifetime impression. First impression lasts a lifetime. How you talk to people and communicate with people make a major difference. It makes a major
does.
difference. It really and truly do. It makes a major, major difference how you talk to people.
And you know the other thing that bothers me is, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
The other
Go
thing
ahead.
that
You're fine.
bothers me is, you know, they always talk about sensitivity training. You don't need no sensitivity training. I watch how y'all interact. Like I used to walk that downtown mall. I would step back and I would watch. When y'all get there with y'all white counterparts, y'all don't treat them like that.
No,
But
totally
when
different.
you come into the black and brown community, the
Yeah.
first thing y'all do when y'all get out y'all car is put y'all hands on y'all gun like y'all ready to shoot. You came up in my house looking for my grandson and put your gun. My son looked in the barrel of a gun and he couldn't say anything because my friends and I, they came in here with such force. The only thing we could do was go into prayer. He's at the top of the steps with the gun down, the barrel in his face, and he's saying my name very calmly, and the officer is mocking him. Now, just suppose he had a shot my son in his face. Just suppose he had a blew his brains out. You want to tell me about some training? You don't need no sensitivity training. You know exactly why you on that force. And you ain't on that force for us. You're not on that force to protect and serve us. You protect and serve your own kind. Come on now.
And you can't
Generation.
train. You know, if someone has hate for somebody or a particular group within them, you can't train that to go other ways.
No.
Hate is so deep and within someone's heart. You can't train them. You can't give that person sensitivity training.
Learn behavior.
How are you going to train that person? You need to find ways that you are hiring more people that look like me, and find ways that you're going to have, I don't know, psychological evaluations for these officers. Part of, it may be part of it now. I'm not sure. I don't know. But psychological training of some kind or psychological evaluations of some kind. Some way that a doctor, a psychiatrist or a psychologist will know this individual is not going to be right for this position.
Exactly.
It has to be, you've got to find a way, because hate, you can't train that. I don't care how many classes you go to. You cannot do anything with that hate when it's in someone's heart.
No.
And they can fool you when they come in for that interview. They can fool you.
Yeah. But you know, Rennie, I know you remember, and I was just thinking about you remember the community police when we had like Tyler and
Stokes,
Bobby Green,
and
all of those guys, Woodfall. We knew them.
We
and they
knew them.
respected us.
Exactly. And
I
we
think
had
police officers need to come from the community.
They need to.
That's what I think.
And you know, we had one, and he was white, and he wasn't even from Charlottesville. But when he was so kind The kids nicknamed him RoboCop. He would come
Yes.
through. If we had
I
a
remember.
cookout going on, he would come through, sit down, have a plate of food. Christmas time, he knew of kids in our neighborhood that wasn't going to be able to get or have something for Christmas. He came over, gave me $200 in an envelope. He said, Rennie, help those kids out for me. You don't even have to
Yes.
tell them where it came from. We would sell dinners, and he
Yes.
would make sure that other officers would come over and buy
Yes.
a plate of food from us. And because he got so involved and so enthralled in our neighborhood, they took him out.
I was getting ready to say that that's what they do. 'Cause
They
it's
took
some
him
good fights
out.
I've been to, yes.
Yeah, they took him
Ms.
out.
Johnson, Ms. Johnson, Ms. Gilmore.
We gotta go. I know we can.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir. You know, we're preaching truth, telling the truth. We need change, right? We can sit on this Zoom all day, all night, talk bylaws, ordinance, all this fancy stuff. We just need good people in those streets, good
We
in our
also
community,
need
right?
ordinance. We
We need
also
good
need
people.
ordinance
Yeah, we
that
need
will
that.
help us, that will
Yeah.
help us do what the
all.
testimony and witness that Ms. Johnson and Ms. Gilmore gave tonight. And
Exactly,
I am,
Nancy.
I am humbled to
Exactly.
hear it. Thank you for
Exactly,
sharing.
Nancy.
I was waiting for the dam to burst, and thank you for doing it tonight. I remember you guys coming up to city council a few years ago. So they got fire and smoke. They're gone. So thank you all for that. But, you know, we can do it by best going back to that original ordinance and the city council, listening to what you guys just said and acting on it.
All right, Dr. Richardson. I'm sure we are going into overtime at the moment, so I'm sure you would like us to go ahead and call this meeting adjourned.
Yeah.
And if that is the flow of things at this point, then we will go ahead and call it adjourned. And we will be in communication as a team.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure I understand for the minutes, and as a member, are we planning on meeting on, will we have a finalized date for the next meeting after the city lets us know when staff is available, whether it's Wednesday or Thursday?
that is correct. We will let you know possibly by tomorrow, we should know.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
And real quick, for the people listening, we definitely want to do a public comment because hearing everything is making us smarter, right? We can't be everywhere all the time at the moment. And just, you know, so I was thinking about that, how the city council does two different public comment sections. So we're figuring this out as we're going along, but that will definitely be added. But as far as I'm concerned, this meeting is adjourned.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Everyone
thank you all.
everyone have a good night.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.